So class, let's look at the learning objective. So last week we have already covered these few topics. So last week we have covered single rate. So when we talk about single rate, we are talking about total cost, where we add in variable cost and fixed cost and we treat it the same. So that is called single rate. So another one would be dual rate. So dual rate, we treat fixed cost and variable cost differently. Okay, so we have two methods, single rate and dual rate. And then we apply these rates to budgeted and actual rates. And then budgeted and actual usages. So learning objective 1 and 2 is under one topic. We also covered direct method, step down method, and then reciprocal method I've showed you, but we're not going deep into the calculation. But in terms of theory class, please make sure you understand what is the difference between these three methods and what is reciprocal method. So we have one more small section for chapter 3, okay, which is your common cost. So when we talk about common cost, we are talking about companies, okay, or individuals. They are incurring the same cost. So instead of each individual or each department are paying their own cost, when they add up together, they can have a cheaper cost. Okay, so later I will give you some examples. So under this common cost, we can either use stand-alone method or incremental method, two different methods, okay, to allocate the cost. So let's look at the notes. So common cost is a cost to operate a facility, okay, or a cost of an activity that is shared by two or more users. So one example will be, let's say you have an accounting firm. So in the accounting firm, you have accounts department, you have audit department, and also tax department. So let's say your common cost is the internet bill. Internet bill. So how are you going to allocate the internet bill among these three departments? Because each of them, they are using a portion of the internet. Okay, so how are you going to allocate it? Maybe tax department use more of the internet to search for information. Okay, and then maybe audit department use more of the internet to access to their audit software. So how are you going to allocate the cost, the internet cost to each of the department? So common costs arise because each user will obtain a lower cost by sharing. Okay, so if they share, they can actually get a lower cost. Later, I'll show you the example. Then, the separate cost that will result if each user operate independently. That means if each of them get their own separate cost, it will be higher. So we have two methods to allocate the common cost. And the goal is basically to allocate the common cost to each user in a reasonable way. So we have two methods, but at the end of the day, it is up to the company on how they want to allocate the common cost. So the first method, we call it as the stand-alone method. So the stand-alone method will determine the weightage. We will use weightage, which is percentage. For the cost allocation, by considering each user as a separate entity to determine the cost allocation weight. Okay, by determining the cost allocation weight. So stand-alone method, we will use the weightage. We will use a percentage. The second method, we call it as incremental cost allocation method. Okay, incremental cost allocation method. So this method, we will rank the individual users. So we will rank the individual users, and then we will see who is the most responsible for the common cost. Who is the most responsible, or who used the common cost the highest. So the first rank user, we call them as primary user. Primary user. So this first rank user is basically the person or the department that uses the common cost the most. Okay, and then the second rank, we call it as incremental user. Incremental user. So subsequent user will be handled in the same manner as the second rank user. So you have one primary user, and then after that, all the rest will be considered as incremental user. Okay, so remember we have two methods. Standalone, we use weightage. Weightage. Incremental method, we determine the primary user. Okay, so let's try one question, class. So this is an additional question. So Ali and Raj shares the internet and online movie bill. So Ali uses more internet while Raj watches more online movies. So below are some of the information on the packages. So if they get internet only, so internet only means Ali's bill lah. Ali's bill. If he get internet only, he has to pay 150. This is Ali's bill. So if online movies only, this is Raj's bill. This is Raj's bill. So if for Raj, if he subscribe only for the online movie, it will be 100 ringgit. But if let's say now both of them, they share the internet and online movie bill, which they are taking this package, the last one. Do you see there's a discount of 30 ringgit? If they purchase it individually, do you see it's 250? If they purchase it together, it is 250. Sorry, if they purchase it separately, it is 250. But if they purchase it together, it is 220. There is a 30 ringgit discount. That's why Raj and Ali should go for this one. So now the question is, this 220. How much should Ali pay and how much should Raj pay? Okay, because this 220 ringgit is actually cheaper compared to them purchasing individually. So how much of this 220, how much of this should Ali pay and how much of this should Raj pay? So there are two methods. One is standalone, and then the second method is incremental method. So we look at the first method. Allocate the 220 between Ali and Raj using the standalone method. Standalone method means we are going to get the weightage. Standalone method means we need to find the weightage. So how to get the weightage? If they purchase separately, their total bill is 250. If they purchase separately, their bill is 250. So to get the weightage for Ali, it will be 150 over the total. That is the weightage. Okay, to get the weightage for Ali. Ali is internet only. So to get the weightage, I take Ali's original bill, 150, divided by the total. Okay, then that is the weightage. Then you apply the weightage on the new bill. Okay, so how much, class? How much do you get for Ali? Find the weightage first. Find the weightage first. And then apply it to the new bill. So how much should we allocate to Ali? How much should Ali pay using standalone method? Class, can you try to calculate and then give me the answer? How much should Ali pay? Correct, 132. 132. So you take 150 divided by the original total bill. The original total bill, 250. That is your weightage. Then you times the new bill. Okay, so Ali only needs to pay 132 now. Okay, what about Raj? Correct. Raj will be 88. 88. So do you see, using standalone method, both of them obtain a certain amount of discount. Ali from 150, now he gets a little bit of discount. He just pay 132. For Raj also same. Initially he needs to pay 100. Now a little bit of discount. He only needs to pay 88. So standalone method, both of them gets a little portion of the discount. Okay, this is standalone method. Always find the weightage first. Let's go to the second method. So allocate the 220 ringgit between Ali and Raj using incremental cost method. Assuming that Ali is the primary user. So we know that Ali is the primary user. So Ali will be first. And then Raj will be second. So since Ali is the primary user, Ali do not get any discount. The primary user, no discount. So how much is Ali's bill? Ali does not have any discount. So how much is Ali's bill? How much should Ali pay under incremental cost method? Correct, 150, because no discount. This was his original bill. So since he is the primary user, he don't get any discount. So Ali, 150. Okay, so how much should Raj pay? 70, correct. We take the new bill, 220 minus 150. So Raj only pay 70. So under the incremental cost method, we assume that the primary user is using most of it. So there's no discount for the primary user. The discount will all go to the incremental users. The second one, we call them as incremental users. The first one is primary user. So when we talk about cumulative bill, class, at the back here, cumulative bill. This is where we double check our answer to make sure we get back 220. So what we do is, first one is 150. Okay, so 150, no changes, so 150. Cumulative means you need to add up. You need to add up. So 150 plus 70. So my cumulative bill becomes 220. So this is incremental cost method. Incremental cost method, you must always have this portion, this column. Because you want to look at the end, when you add up all your primary and your incremental users, what is your cumulative, and your final answer must be the same as your total. Okay, it must be the same, 220. So this is standalone method and incremental cost method. Any question, class? Okay, no question. So chapter 3 is until here. Okay, the rest of it are like these contracts, bundle products, all these we will not cover. We will not cover. So let's go into chapter 4. Can you all prepare your slides, okay, or your notes? Okay, let's start. So chapter 4 is on activity-based costing. So activity-based costing is actually for you to calculate overhead. For you to calculate overhead. So if you refer back, our manufacturing cost. Our manufacturing cost consists of direct material, direct labor head, and manufacturing overhead, MOH, manufacturing overhead. So manufacturing overhead can be calculated using two methods. So the one that you have learned in Management Accounting 1, MA1, the subject is traditional costing. Traditional costing is where we use POHR, predetermined overhead rate, POHR. Okay, predetermined P, overhead is OH, and then rate. So this traditional costing, or we call it as POHR, predetermined overhead rate, uses only one rate. One rate. Okay, but now you're going to learn a new method. We call it as activity-based costing. So activity-based costing, we call it as ABC rate. ABC, activity-based costing rate. So this one, it depends on your activity. So if you have 5 activities, that means you have 5 ABC rates. If you have 6 activities, then you have 6 ABC rates. Traditional method, only one rate, only one. But the new method, it is based on activity. Okay, so later we will look at how to do the calculation. So remember, traditional costing and activity-based costing is for you to calculate your overhead only. Materials and labor, okay, those are very easy to determine according to your product. The one that is tough is your overhead, your manufacturing overhead. So there are two methods. One is traditional, one is activity-based costing. Then we will see how to apply this to a manufacturer. And then later on, we will apply the same concept to services. So the method to do it is the same, class, manufacturing and also service industry. It is the same. The only difference is the wordings. Okay, the wordings is different. We will also look at the benefits and limitation of the ABC method. So let's look at traditional first. Traditional. So the traditional costing system allocate overhead using a predetermined overhead rate. P and then overhead. So OH and then R. POHR. POHR. Predetermined overhead rate. So predetermined overhead rate, there's only one rate. Do you see? There's only one. So you can either use direct labor hours. Okay, there are three types, class. You can either use direct labor hours, or under job order costing, they will use direct labor cost. Also can. Or if you are doing process costing is where they produce a lot of common products. Okay, so this one you will use machine hours as the activity base. But POHR always only have one rate. So if you are using direct labor hours, your rate will be per labor hour. Okay, so there's only one rate. This is traditional costing. So let's look at one example. So Atlas produces 2 abdominal fitness product. Abdominal means fitness. Fitness product. The ab bench and also ab coaster. So the direct material cost per unit is 40 for ab bench. Okay, they already put it down here. And then 30 will be for ab coaster. Direct labor cost is 12 for each of the products. So you can put in 12 and 12. So both products require 1 direct labor hour. 1 direct labor hour. And both products are allocated overhead cost is 30 per unit. So 30 times 1 hour equals to 30 lah at the bottom here. Okay, they have included down here. So 30 times 1 direct labor hour. So your overhead is 30. So when you add up everything, your ab bench, the cost to produce an ab bench is 82. The cost to produce an ab coaster is 72. This is using traditional method, class. Traditional method. So now our concern, material and labor, no issue, class. Material and labor, you can trace it directly to your product. Okay, our concern is here. Overhead. Is this overhead correct? Is this overhead correct? Because you are using only one rate. This is POHR, only one rate. Direct labor hours. So our concern is this overhead allocated to these products? Is it correct? So there is a need for a new approach because of all these reasons. There are very major changes to your manufacturing and your service industry. If you look at most of the factories, class, okay, or if you look at YouTube videos, you go through some of the companies, most of them, they are going into they are including more machines, more robots. So there are many changes to the manufacturing companies. Not only that, services also. If you look at accounting, now we have a lot of accounting softwares. Okay, or auditing, you have auditing softwares, taxation software. Okay, even to record a transaction or to record a sales. Okay, if you go to shopping malls, they just need to scan the item and then immediately that product will be recorded into the accounts. So there are many changes to the manufacturing and your service industry. And because of the increase in machines, in robots, there is a decrease in direct labor usage. Okay, reducing a lesser amount of direct labor usage. So there is a significant increase of total overhead. So this one is normally because companies have more machines. So your depreciation also increase. Your electricity bill also increase. All these are your overhead costs. Factory machine depreciation, factory electricity bill, factory water bill. Okay, so all of this will increase as you bring in more machines and more robots. So it is inappropriate to use a plant-wide predetermined overhead rate. Plant-wide. Plant-wide means only one rate. Only one rate. Okay, because some products might require lesser labor hours, more machine. But some product requires more machine hours and lesser labor hours. So how can you use just one rate? Plant-wide means just one rate. And then you apply it to all products. So it is inappropriate. Inappropriate. So complex manufacturing processes, okay, like just now I mentioned, some products, they need more machine hours. Some products, they need lesser machine hours. Okay, but they need more labor hours. So very complex products, complex manufacturing process leads to the need for a multiple allocation base. That means you cannot only use one rate, cannot use one plant-wide rate. You must use multiple rates. So this is what we call as activity-based costing, multiple rates. Okay, multiple rates. So it is based on your activity. If you have 4 activities, you have 4 rates. If you have 5 activities, you have 5 rates. Okay, so different from your traditional. Traditional is plant-wide. Only one rate, and then you apply that one rate to all products and all departments. Okay, so let's look at this one. What does it mean by activity-based costing? So activity-based costing is where you allocate overhead to multiple activity cost pool. Your overhead, just now instead of using only one base cost, you have multiple cost pool now. And then you assign the activity cost pool to your products using cost driver. So later I will show you what is the calculation, how to allocate from your activity cost pool, and then you allocate it to your products or services. Okay. So before that, let's see an example. So activity is any event or action or any transaction that incurs costs when you are producing a product or when you are performing a service. So example, the activity is purchase. So when you are doing purchasing, you incur costs in terms of your staff salary. Okay, besides that, you also need to incur internet costs to send email, okay, or telephone bill, you need to call up your supplier. So all of these incur cost. So purchase is a activity. Next, activity cost pool is where the overhead cost is attributed to a distinct activity. So like this one, your activity is purchase. So your activity cost pool is ordering direct material or ordering your materials. Next one, your cost driver will be any activity that has a direct cost-effect relationship with the resources consumed. So here, under purchase, my cost driver will be the number of purchase order. This is your relationship with your resources. Okay, so class, normally your activity cost pool and cost driver will be given in the question. Okay, but it is all interlinked. Your activity cost pool and cost driver. Okay, so before we look at the steps, class, any question? Any question? Okay, so let's look at the steps, class, the steps. So under activity-based costing, we have a total of 4 steps, 4 steps. So let's go through the steps together. Step number 1, identify and classify the activities involved. In a manufacture of specific product, and you need to assign overhead to the cost pool. So step 1 will normally be provided in your question. Okay, step 1 will be provided. Step 2, they ask you to identify the cost driver. This one also will be provided in your question. They will give you the cost pool, they will give you the cost driver, and they will give you the amount of overhead. Okay, step 3 and step 4, you will need to compute on your own. So based on your overhead and based on your cost driver, you need to compute your ABC rate, activity-based costing rate, ABC rate. This is step 3. So once you have compute your rate, you allocate the overhead cost to your products using the rate that you calculate in step 3. Okay, so what you need to do, calculate the ABC rate and then allocate to products using the ABC rate. So before we move on, let's look at the differences between the two methods. So traditional costing, we call it as POHR. So basically, your step 1 is to calculate POHR. Okay, calculate POHR. And then your step 2, allocate overhead to products using POHR. So remember, POHR is only one rate, one rate. So for traditional costing, you only do one time. Step 1, step 2, one time. Now, activity-based costing. Activity-based costing, step 1, calculate ABC rate. ABC rates. So if you have 5 activity, then you have 5 rates. You need to calculate 5 times. If you have 6 activities, then you need to calculate 6 times. But for traditional, you only calculate 1 time, only 1 rate. But for ABC, it depends on your activity. So, step 2, this is step 1. So step 2, you allocate overhead to the products using ABC rates. So just now, if your ABC rates, you have 4 rates, then you need to calculate 4 times. Okay, but for this one, POHR, only 1 time. When you allocate to your products, you calculate only 1 time. But for your ABC rate, it depends on your activity. So if you have 4 activities, then you need to allocate 4 times. Okay, so if you look at it, it is quite similar, the steps that you need to do. These are the steps that you need to do. Okay, to calculate the rate, and then you allocate using the rate. Okay, allocate using the rate. So under ABC costing, there are 2 stages. Just now we learned 4 steps. So that 4 steps can be summarized into 2 stages. Stage 1, overhead cost is assigned to activity cost pool. This is just now step 1. If you refer back to just now, step 1, you assign your overhead to the cost pool. Step number 1. So step 1 will be given in your question. Okay, step 1 will be given in your question. Step 2 to 4 will be to allocate overhead to your products using the cost driver. So this is step 2 until 4. So step 2 until 4, step 2 is given in your question. 3 and 4, you will need to do it on your own. So the more complex a product's operation is, so you have more activities and more cost driver. So at the end of the day, it comes down to the complexity of your product's operation. So we look at one example. So this is one example. So let's say your activity cost pool, you have 4. So do you see your overhead? Your overhead is at the top. Your overhead cost is assigned to all your activity cost pool. You see the arrow going down. So you have purchasing, you have storing, machining, and supervising. So these are your 4 activity cost pool. And for each of the activity cost pool, you have 1 cost driver. Number of purchase order for purchasing, amount of square meter for storing, number of machine hours for machining, and number of employees under supervising. So once you get your ABC rate, your ABC rate will be here, ABC rate. Okay, so when you calculate, you will need to get your ABC rate. And using your rate, you allocate the overhead to each of the product. Do you see here the arrow? From number of purchase order, it will go to lawn mower, it will go to snow throwers. Same go with storing. A portion will go to lawn mower, a portion will go to snow throwers. Okay, same goes with your machine hour and number of employees. So this is called ABC rate. So remember class, we are only doing overhead. Overhead. So just by looking at this diagram, you will see that actually it is quite accurate. Because instead of using 1 rate, your traditional costing 1 rate, now you are using 4 different activities. So you have 4 different rates. In this example, you have 4 different rates. Okay, let's try this. Indicate whether the following statements are true or false. Number 1. Traditional costing system allocate overhead by the means of multiple overhead rate. True or false, class? Multiple overhead rate. True or false? Traditional method, class. Correct. False. False. Okay, because traditional method is one overhead rate. One overhead rate. Multiple overhead rates, we call them as activity-based costing. Multiple overhead rates is activity-based costing. Next, activity-based costing allocates overhead in 2 stages. True or false? 2 stages. Correct. True, 2 stages, class. So if you look at the 2 stages, first one, you allocate overhead. Then after that, you allocate overhead to your cost pool. And then the second stage, from the cost pool, you allocate to the products. Next, direct material and direct labor costs are easier to trace to products than overhead. True or false? Correct. True. If you look at any products, direct material is present in the product, class, so it's quite easy to trace. Direct labor also same. You can calculate using your cost card, okay, or you have any employee sheet, okay, worksheet. So as manufacturing process has become more automated means more machines. More companies will choose to allocate overhead on the basis of direct labor costs. True or false? False, class, correct. When we talk about more automated, more machines, so you should use the basis of machine hours. Machine hours. So direct labor costs will be like job order costing, job order costing. For manufacturing processes, okay, companies who use process costing, companies with more machines, you should use machine hours. Okay, last one, in activity-based costing. An activity is any event, action, or transaction that incurs cost. True, correct. True, okay. An activity is any event, action, or transaction that incurs cost. So, class, any question? This is the theory part. No, okay. If no question, we will go for a 10-minute short break. 10-minute short break. So later when we come back, we will go through the ABC calculation part. Okay. So just now we have already completed the basics, okay, and also the theory part for activity-based costing. So now we are going to your second learning objective, where we will try to apply this activity-based costing to a manufacturer. So activity-based costing has 4 steps. So we recap again the 4 steps that just now we have mentioned. First one, you identify and classify the activities, and then assign overhead to the cost pool. So this one normally will be provided in your question. Step number 2, you need to identify the cost driver. Okay, this one will also be provided in your question. Then step number 3, you need to compute the activity-based rate. This one you will need to compute it for each of the cost pool. And then last, you need to allocate the overhead cost to the products. So let's look at the example. Let's look at step number 1. Let's go step by step. Let's look at step number 1. Identify and classify activities and assign overhead. So this is step 1, where you need to identify and classify activities, which is here. You identify and classify your activities and then allocate overhead, okay, which is at the other portion. Okay, you allocate overhead to each of the activity. So here, manufacturing will get 500,000 overhead cost, setup 100,000, purchase ordering 50,000, product development 200,000, and property and plant 50,000. So when you add up all of your overhead costs, you will get a total of 900,000. So this is step number 1. To identify the activities and to allocate your overhead to your cost pool. This is step number 1. So step number 2, we need to identify our cost driver. So cost driver will be given under here. So each of the activity cost pool will have one cost driver. So cost driver must accurately measure the actual consumption of the activity. So for example, this company has identified each of the following. Manufacturing is machine hours. Total is 50,000 machine hours. Okay, for setup, they will call it as number of setups. Total in the whole year is 2,000 setups. This one estimated is total plus total. Total for the whole factory, total. Okay, total for the whole factory. So purchase order, number of purchase orders. Total for the whole factory, 2,500 purchase orders. Total means if the company has 5 products, all the 5 products add up. 2,500 purchase orders. For product development, will be products developed. Okay, under here, 2 products. Property and plant, they measure using square meter. So, 25,000 square meter. So, these are the cost driver. Cost driver for the whole company. Okay, this one is the total. So they've given you in step 1 your overhead according to each activity cost pool. Step 2, they've given you your cost driver according to each activity cost pool. So step number 3, you need to calculate your activity-based overhead rate, your ABC rate. So basically, your ABC rate is estimated overhead per activity divided by estimated use of cost driver per activity. So remember just now I mentioned if you have 5 activities means you have 5 rates. Do you see we have 5 activities? Manufacturing, setup, purchase ordering, product development, and plant and property. So 5 activity. 5 activity, so you have 5 rates. You see at the back here, you have a total of 5 different rates. So basically, you use your estimated overhead. This is step 1. Estimated overhead per activity divided by your estimated use of cost driver. This is your step 2. So you will get your activity-based overhead rate, ABC rate, step 3. So class, in your answers, please do not use this one, step 1, step 2, step 3. This one is for you to refer only. In your answers, please use these wordings: estimated overhead, estimated use of cost driver per activity, and then activity-based overhead rate. Use these wordings, class. So if you look here, estimated overhead, where do we get this? 900,000. You refer back to step 1. You will see manufacturing 500,000, setup 100,000. Okay, we refer back. There, manufacturing 500,000, setup 100,000, and when you add up, you get 900,000. This is step 1. Okay, step 1. Allocate overhead to cost pool. Then divided by estimated use of cost driver, 50,000 machine hours, 2,000 setup, 2,500 purchase order. This is actually given in your step number 2. So if you look at your step number 2, it is under here. Do you see estimated use of cost driver per activity? So 50,000 machine hours, 2,000 setup, 2,005 purchase orders, okay, and so on. So what you need to do, take your step 1, which is your overhead, divided by step 2, which is your estimated use of cost driver. So once you divide 500,000 divide by 50,000, you get 10 per machine hour. Okay, class. Since this is a rate, right? So you need to put per machine hour, per setup. All of these have half mark, class. Per order. Please make sure you put this in your answer because it has half mark. Per square meter. So how do you know what to put here? You look at your estimated cost driver there, machine hours, setup, order, okay, or you can use purchase order also can, accepted. Okay, products and square meter. So basically your cost driver will tell you what to write in your rates. So since it is a rate, please make sure class you have all this. Per machine hour, per setup. Okay, per means for one setup, for one purchase order. So you need to put all this wording because it is a rate, class, it is a rate. So 100,000 divided by 2,000, you get 50 per setup. 50,000 divided by 2,500, you get 20 per order. 200,000 divided by 2, you get 100 per product. And 50,000 divided by 25,000 square meters, you get 2 per square meter. Okay, this is step number 3 to get your activity-based overhead rate. So once you get your activity-based overhead rate, now you need to allocate to the products. Okay, so allocate to the products. So remember just now we have step 2, your estimated use of cost driver 50,000, machine hours 2,000 setup, 2,500 purchase orders, and so on. So this is taken from your step number 2. Remember just now I said this one is your total. This is your total. So now in order to do step 4, allocate overhead to products. Allocate overhead to products. So in order to do step 4, we need to know this 50,000. how much of it is app bench? How much of this is app coaster? Okay, 2000 setup. How much of this is app bench? How much of this 2000 is app coaster, and so on? Your purchase order. How much is this under app bench? And how much is under app coaster? Okay, so normally they will provide this in the question. So let's call this app bench as 2A because it comes from step 2. Okay, and let's call app coaster as 2B because this one also comes from step number 2. So in allocating overhead costs, it is necessary to know the expected use for each product, which is given here, 30,000 machine hours, 20,000 machine hours. 500 setup, 1,500 setup. So all these are according to your product app bench and your app coaster. Okay, according to your product. Because of its low volume and high number of components, so app coaster will require more setups and more purchase order compared to app bench. So more setups. Do you see? This one is 500 only for app bench, but it's 1,500 for app coaster. Okay, you look at the purchase order also. App bench only 750, but this one, wow, 1,750. So app coaster will require more setup and more purchase order. So do you see different products, they will require different items, different quantity of activity cost pool, cost driver. Okay, this is why we need to use activity-based costing. If you use only POHR, traditional costing, then you won't be able to identify all this, which will lead to inaccurate costing. Okay, so we have app bench, we have app coaster 2A and 2B. So now we are going to allocate to the products. So your estimated use of cost driver, this is 2A. Okay, just now you have taken from 2A. Then remember your activity-based overhead rate, this is your step 3. So basically your step 4 will be your cost allocated. So each of it, if you look back to your step number 3, do you see 10, 50, 20, 100,000 and 2? So it is all listed here. So based on each activity cost pool, so you multiply lah. Multiply class, you look at the symbol here, multiply. Okay, multiply. So once you multiply, you will get the total cost allocated. Total cost allocated. So once you get total cost allocated, 460 for app bench and 440 for app coaster. So once you have got that, you divided by the quantity produced, 25,000 and 5,000. So you will get per unit 18.40 cents for app bench and 88 for app coaster. Okay, 18.40 cents for app bench and 88 for app coaster. So class, these are the steps, okay, to do your activity-based costing. Step 1, step 2, allocate overhead, and also your cost driver will be given in the question. You will need to calculate step 3, which is your activity-based overhead rate. And step 4, using the overhead rate that you calculate in step 3, you allocate the overhead to your products. Step 4, that is step 4. Okay, any question? These are the 4 steps. Okay, any part of it that you are not sure? So normally 2A and 2B, this portion all will be mentioned in the question. Okay, either they will give you in figure format or they will give you the percentage. How many percent is for app bench, how many percent is for app coaster, and so on. Okay, so let's do a recap. So step 1 is basically your estimated overhead. This one will be given in the question. They will tell you how many activities you have and what is the overhead allocated to each of the activity. Okay, they will mention to you what is the activity and what is the overhead amount allocated to each of the activity. Then step number 2, you will need to allocate the cost driver. Cost driver. This one also will be given in the question, and it can be divided into 2A, 2B or 2C. So all these 2A, 2B, 2C, these are products. So if your company has 10 products, then you have 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 2E, 2F, okay, and so on. But it will be given in your question. How many products, then they will provide it for you. So step 3 is your estimated overhead, which is from step 1 here, divided by your cost driver, which is in step 2 here. And finally, step 4 is where you allocate your overhead to your products. So since you are going to allocate to your products, you need to use your cost driver for your product. 2A or 2B times your ABC rate. Okay, so class, remember the step that you need to do. First one, you divide overhead divide by cost driver to get your ABC rate. First one you divide, class, you divide. Second one you times to get the total overhead allocated to the product. Units produced will be given in the question. Normally will be given in the question. For this case, did they mention? Let me check. Let's see whether they mention. They didn't mention in the slides, I think. They didn't mention in the slides, but normally the question will tell you, okay, how many units that is produced. Okay, any other question, class? Welcome. Okay, these are the 4 steps. Anything you want to ask? So once we have completed all the 4 steps, so now what we can do is we compare. We want to compare your traditional and we want to compare it to your ABC. So do you see your direct material doesn't change, class? Your direct labor also the same. The thing that changes is your overhead because traditional costing and ABC method is focused on your overhead. So do you see under traditional costing, your total cost, manufacturing cost is 82. But under your new method, which is more accurate because you have more activity cost pool. You have more activity, more rates. It is only 18 ringgit 40 cents. So your total manufacturing cost is only 70.40. So we always use ABC as the correct method. We always use ABC as the correct method. You use ABC as the standard, okay? Use ABC as the standard. So you compare, do you see? Your actual cost is only 70.40 cents. So you overstate. Do you see your traditional method is higher? So you overstate by 11 and 60 cents. So when you overprice the product, you overprice at bench, you possibly lose your market share to your competitors because your competitors might be able to produce it, even price it at a lower price. Price it at a lower price. Do you see your cost? Your cost is actually only 70. But using the traditional method, you thought it was 82. So in the end, you overstate your cost. When you overstate your cost, you will overprice your items. So when you overprice your items, you will lose market share because your competitors will be able to price their items even cheaper. Okay, so remember, always use ABC as the standard and compare. Compare against ABC. So for app coster, same thing. Direct material doesn't change, direct labor doesn't change. The thing that changes is your overhead. So do you see from 30 suddenly became 88? From 30 under ABC, it became 88. So remember just now, they say that app coaster has more parts. So they need more setup. Okay, they need more setup and they need more purchase order. That's why your overhead is higher. So if you use ABC as your standard, do you see last time when you use traditional costing, you understate your cost. You understate your cost by 58. That's a lot, huh? You understate your cost by 58. So when you understate your cost, you underprice your product. When you understate your cost, you underprice your product. So you sacrifice your profit. Or sometimes companies might even be operating at a loss. Okay, because they understate their cost. Do you see? Understate their cost. So by so much, 58. So when you understate your cost, you underprice your product. Sometimes even to the point where they didn't even cover their cost. Okay, they thought that their cost is 72, but actually their cost is 130. Okay, so this is how we compare between traditional and ABC. Between traditional and ABC. So if the question gives you traditional and also ABC, you can compare using this overstated, understated, overprice and underprice. Okay, we can use this method. Any question, class? This is comparing using traditional and ABC. Okay, let's try this question. So Zhou Automotive has 5 activity cost pool, 5 activity cost pool. So given to you, ordering, machine setup, machining, assembling, and inspecting. 5 activity cost pool. And 2 products. So 2 products is scissors jack. Your 2 products is at the back here, scissors jack and hydraulic jacks. So it is expected to produce 200,000 units of scissors jack, 80,000 units of hydraulic jack. So having identified its activity cost pool, so given to you 5 activity cost pool, and the cost driver, the estimated use of cost driver. And also, correct, they have given you your activity cost pool, your cost driver, and don't forget they have given you your overhead. Estimated overhead for each of the activity. Okay, so let's look at the question. A, they ask you to prepare a schedule to show the computation for your ABC rate per cost driver. This is step number 3 lah. Okay, they ask you to calculate your ABC rate. Step 3. Next, they ask you to prepare a schedule to assign each activity overhead cost to the 2 products. This one is step 4. Okay, step 4. Assign your overhead to the 2 products. Then next, they ask you to compute overhead per unit. Overhead per unit for each product. So they have given to you the quantity. So later, once you have calculated the overhead, you just divide lah. 200,000 scissors jack, 80,000 hydraulic jacks. And they ask you to comment on the comparative overhead. So later I will show you how to compare. Okay, so step 1, they ask you to calculate activity-based overhead rate. So they've given to you all the items. They've given to you your overhead, and they've given to you your estimated use of cost driver. Okay, class, I give you a few minutes. Can you fill it up? And then later we will discuss the answers together. Okay, use your estimated overhead. Divide, class, divided by estimated use of cost driver, which is this one. Okay, estimated overhead divided by estimated use of cost driver. Okay, I give you a few minutes, fill it up. So class, don't forget your orders, per order, per setup, per hour, per part, and per test. Okay. When you do your rates, don't forget all these words. Per order, per setup, per hour, per part, and per test. Okay, let's check the answers together. So first one, ordering and receiving. 2 million divided by 2,500. What do you get, class? Activity-based overhead rate. What do you get? $2 million divided by 2,500. What is your activity-based overhead rate? $800 per order, correct? 800 per order. Okay, the second one, machine setup. What do you get? Machine setup. Okay, machine setup, correct, 5,000. Machining, machining, machining 25, correct. What about assembling? Correct, 6, and then last one, inspecting. Correct, 200. Okay, don't forget your total, 53. Okay, 53 million. So next, once you have got your overhead rate, step 3, now allocate it to your products. And then give me your total assigned costs. Okay, I give you a few minutes, class. Can you fill this up and give me your total assigned costs? Okay, class, let's discuss. So your activity-based rate you will get from just now. Here, this is step number 3. So what you need to do, you transfer all of this activity-based rate into your product, okay, for scissors jack and also for hydraulic jack. So take note of the symbol here. This one is times, okay. Just now is divide. This one is times. So estimated use of cost driver, you can get it from the top here. Okay, for hydraulic jack, you can get it from the question also. So class, can you give me total assigned cost? Scissors jack. Total assigned cost for scissors jack. What do you get? Total assigned cost for scissors jack. Correct, 25.6 million. 25.6 million. So make sure you fill up all this, class, times your rate. You should get 25.6 million. Okay, what about your hydraulic jet? What do you get? Correct, 27.4 million. So this is question B, B. They ask you to allocate your overhead to the two products. So question C, they ask you to give per unit. Per unit. So what you do is you divide by the total units produced. 200,000 for scissors jack, 80 for hydraulic jack. Okay, 200,000 for scissors jack, 80,000 for hydraulic jack. So in the end, your overhead cost will be 128 Hong Kong dollar per scissors jack, 342.50 cents for each hydraulic jack. Okay, so this is overhead cost per unit. So D, they ask you to comment on the comparative overhead cost. So class, just now in your slides, they compare POHR and ABC. Okay, just now your slides, huh? The example that they give is POHR and ABC. But this time, do you see there's no POHR? There's no POHR class. Straight away, you only have ABC. But you have both products, ABC for both products. So what you do is you compare the both products. You compare this one for both products using their quantity. Because there's no POHR for you to compare. Overstated, understated, overpriced, underpriced. There's no way for you to compare. So the data show that the total overhead assigned to 80,000 hydraulic jack exceeds the overhead assigned to 200,000 scissors jack. So what it means is, do you see for 80,000 hydraulic jack, the overhead is 27.4 million. 27.4 million. Which is more than scissors jack, 25.6 million only. This one 27.4 million. But do you see the quantity is so much lesser, 80,000 only. This one, the quantity is more, 200,000. Yet the overhead cost is lower, 25.6 million only. Then you mention the overhead cost per hydraulic jack. Hydraulic jack will be 342 Hong Kong dollar and 50 cents. And scissors jack per scissors jack will be 128 Hong Kong dollar. Okay, class. So if you do not have POHR and ABC, if you do not have POHR and ABC, you compare between products. Okay, this is the way you compare between products. But if you have POHR and ABC, then you use just now's method: overstated, understated, overpriced, and underpriced. Okay, any question, class? Okay, let's just look at the benefits. So the benefit of ABC is, of course, you have more cost pool. So if you have 5 activity, you have 5 cost pool. So you actually have more accurate product costing because you have more cost pool. So when you have more cost pool, you have more control over your overhead because you can identify which activity you need to reduce the overhead. Which activity, okay, the overhead is just nice. So when you have control over your overhead, it will give you a better decision. So you're able to make good decisions. Your company will be able to make good decisions, especially pricing, class. Pricing decisions. Okay, because like just now, do you see overstated, overpriced? If you understate your cost, you underprice. So all of this, you will be able to identify you will be able to identify more accurate costing, product cost, more accurate product cost. So it will lead to more accurate pricing decisions. So using multiple cost pool is actually better than using one plant-wide pool. Remember just now your POHR, your traditional costing, you only use one plant-wide pool, only one rate. So multiple cost pool under activity-based costing, you have numerous activity cost pool with more relevant cost driver. So like this example, do you see your products? This one you have seven activity cost pool. So your overhead costs at the top, your overhead costs basically will be allocated to each of your activity cost pool. And using your cost driver, you allocate to each of your products, okay, in your company. So this is how activity-based costing allocates overhead to your products.